no matter why you came tonight, whether that's because you're a transit worker who's fighting for justice on the job, whether that's because you're a transit rider who wants more affordable or more accessible service, whether that's because you're just a DC resident who's concerned about gentrification and the changes that are happening in your city, in your neighborhood, whether, as many of you are, you're an activist, you're fighting for economic, racial, gender, disability justice, whether you're anything that I didn't mention, I just want you to know that the ATU, the groups that organized this here tonight, and a lot of the groups that are in the room stand with you and are ready to fight with you in whatever struggle you have in this town to get paid a decent wage, to get respected on your job and in the street. And I just want you all to give yourselves a big hand for supporting each other tonight.
You know, one thing I can say is we restaurant workers, a lot of us, we're lower income, we rely on public transit a lot of times to get to and from work, as far as just living our everyday lives. But the same goes for the transit workers. A lot of times they don't have the time to properly cook a meal, to get the time to make a nice, handmade lunch. They need to swing by a little place to get a little bite to eat. So we really both rely on each other to get our jobs done. And it's really important, I would like to be able to dine out in my own restaurant. And I know that many of the bus drivers and the train workers and all the transit workers I work with, they should be able to come in to my lovely establishment and get suited finely and have a nice fine dining meal. But when our hours are getting cut, our wages are getting cut, we end up we can't even, dine at here at our bus place in Poise or La Homage. We end up having to go to McDonald's. That's all we have is $2 or $3 to spend. And it's a shame, and it creates a bigger toll.
When you look at the growth of the black middle class in DC, it was largely around public sector jobs. And the public sector includes public transportation. So there was a time in DC when having a public transportation job meant that you had a good quality job. But when you privatize, when DDOT privatizes public transportation, now we have what used to be good jobs turned into low quality jobs, and that's affecting people's ability to continue to live in this city. So I think that this is an issue not just of transportation, but to connect it to the larger movement of what's happening in this country. It's a Black Lives Matter issue. It's an issue of economic violence that's happening to drivers.
As new transit models are adopted by the district, accessibility is sometimes an afterthought or not provided at all. The bike share system receives government funding, yet is not accessible to many. We hope trikes and hand cycles will be made available in the future. There is work being done now to ensure the streetcar platforms are accessible, and WMATA is working to address the more than half of all bus stops that were identified as inaccessible last year. There have been small improvements. Still, many of the new private transportation providers that have been welcomed into the district are inaccessible. As traditional and accessible modes like buses and rail face cuts to services, and as the workers face cuts in wages and possibly their jobs over time, people with significant disabilities face the very real possibility of less and less access to transportation. As passengers, accessible transportation is vital to the disability community. But worker rights are a disability issue as well. Just 33% of the district's residents with a disability are employed. Nearly 30% live in poverty. Too many who are employed receive sub-minimum wages and are denied the right to a voice on the job. The system that encourages privatization and discourages ensuring workers are paid living wages and benefits is intertwined with the system that denies the supports and services that people with disabilities need to stay and live in the community.
We will not rest until some measure of justice is brought for these workers, these two, those six, the bike share workers, the circulator workers. It's our mission, it's clear, we pursue it. Thank you.
So of course when I was hired, I turned down another opportunity, which was career opportunity. Mind you, the DC streetcar was paying more. More is not always best. I found that out 9 months later. Like I said, what happened, 9 months into it, I was let go because I decided to join a union. And it was on Valentine's Day that I got this call, and it was just kind of crazy. I felt like it was Friday the 13th, you know, it's like Sweetheart Day, and I get some bad news that my relationship is over with my job. I didn't cheat, you know, I'm thinking of all these things that I could accept if it had happened, but I was a person that went to work every day, on time, you know, prepared for work, you know, and gear and everything, you know, so I just couldn't understand. Had I did something wrong, once again, I use that relationship thing. If you, you know, did something wrong to your mate where you cheated, or you took some money that wasn't yours, or something to that nature, you know, I could accept that if I was late every day, taught material, things of that nature. But I was one of those people that I could be doing my work and stop doing what I'm doing to help the next person. And that's just, I have a passion when it comes to work. And so I was devastated. For about a month, I walked around just feeling numb because I could not understand why I was let go. I was told later that it was my work performance, but no, the union was going to come the week before they let me go. They was coming that week after. So they had to make a decision. And most of the people that I do know they met were the people who we applied for the union. We wanted the union.
I worked at DC Streetcar almost 2 years. I only missed one day, and that was just for a funeral. No sick calls, none of that. Reported to work on time every day, never received a write-up, never had an incident report, nothing. And they terminated.
Bike share workers are transit workers, and that bike share is transit, it's public money, and it's not accessible to all people, as Carol was talking about. Equity issues in terms of where bike share stations are, in terms of who's using it, it's pretty bad. And there's an ongoing dialogue within, I think, the sort of bike advocacy community around who's using bike share, who's not using bike share, what does it mean when we've got public money going towards a program that's basically being used by almost 90+% white people in DC.
It's about the access to the system. And that's the issue that we're having, is the access to the system. See, you don't have a lot of docking stations on Pennsylvania Avenue. You don't have a lot of them in the Southeast. Where you have them is Northwest. Where you have them is downtown. When you have them in Georgetown. But you don't have them in the communities where the workers are coming from. We find that as an issue, and we talk to the company about it. But here's the catch. The company's insulated because DDOT is the one that decides where the stations go.
We are here trying to provide services that are indispensable. The ability to move A to B is every day. Think about that. You have to go from A to B in order to make something happen. Otherwise, you don't really exist.
DC circulator is pretty on the outside, but it's bleeding on the inside. I looked on the news the other night, they said it costs $106,000 for a family of 4. I can't afford to live in the district. I'm from DC, born DC jump. I'm a 4th generation. I want to live in the district. I can't afford to come back. We can work in DC, but we can't live in DC. You telling us that we're picking up federal workers, but we're privatized? Doesn't make sense to me.
If you look at the history of transit in this country, the original transit agencies in the big cities, such as New York and Chicago, started out as private companies. They were not government agencies. These were entrepreneurs who got into the business of providing service. The problem was that it just wasn't economical to provide these services on a for-profit basis. Eventually, these companies failed, and the government had to step in and take these services over because they had become essential to life in big cities. Here in DC, the Metrobus portion of WMATA was built on privately operated bus companies. So those people who tell you that privatization is this bold and exciting new idea that is the way for the future are really lying to you. What transit privatization is the failed model of the past.
Why a city, from a policy perspective and as an attorney, how a city can give millions of dollars of our taxpayer money to companies who win the lowest bid by violating workers' already well-established rights? I don't understand. They did not teach you that in law school.